So, read this book with a few others, and would I recommend it? No. And maybe I shouldn't be so honest about this book and the way I feel about it, but even after going back and forth in my head, I'm going to tell you guys the truth of how I feel. Hello, Writers in Training. I'm Shanon, writing under the pen name of S.C. Houston and the author of the Clash of Goddesses series, and now A Curse of Scales and Feathers. And today I am going to talk about a book that I kind of roped a bunch of other Authortubers into reading with me because I had heard about this book, which is You Must Market Your Book by Honoree Corder. And I heard about it on, I think, Joanna Penn's podcast. When they were talking about it, it just sounds so exciting for me because I want to learn anything new about marketing. And Granted, I like to do a lot of research. I research a lot of things, and it might be part of why I didn't like this book. But let me get into that here in a little bit. So the other people I roped into reading this with me was Andy from Self Pub with Andy, Margaret Bernard, and Emma Bennett. And I think if I understand the way they're approaching it, or at least Andy and Emma have told me that, you know, they're trying to find the positive spins in this book, and I don't have anything positive to give you. Now, I did like a whole formal script. I was going to do this all formally from the script itself and everything, but I think maybe it might be better for me to just do this informally and maybe just read you the parts from the script that were the actual parts where I had ideas about my feelings for this book. So I would say that in the beginning, right, I'm reading what she is saying, and the first line that caught my attention was that book marketing is fun. And I was like, oh yeah, I can get on board with that because I do think book marketing is fun. Probably not as fun for people who don't have the money to spend, especially if their marketing efforts don't pan out, you know, if the ROI is not very good, but I do find that book marketing can be fun. And I also like that she maybe, you know, broke down what book marketing is for the person who may not know, which is book marketing is an author's strategic execution of identifying and appealing to prospective readers and can include advertising, branding, pricing, and sales. So yes, this all makes sense. I was on board with most of this. So I kept thinking, okay, I know this, and I went to the next page and the next page where marketing really begins. 2 vital components to a book's success: the quality of your book and your book marketing mindset. Okay, yeah, I can get on board with those. And I thought, okay, book quality. Is this like kind of the same stuff I hear all the time? And sure enough, it was what she calls the 4 cornerstones of book marketing. Wait, I have this in my script where I wrote it down because I did think, well, yeah, if you don't know what the quality of your book means for having a good quality product, then perhaps this would be important to know, which is having a good cover, having a good editorial process, and that's like your editor, your proofreader, having an interior design, like your formatting and your front and back matter, and then of course your book description, which helps to sell your book. So okay, I know all these things, sounds good. This is good for the beginning of the book to kind of set you up. And so I thought, okay, what else? She moves into talking about learning from other authors and studying what they're doing. And yes, this speaks to the reason why I came up with the Self-Publishing Tips and Tricks podcast, because I wanted the opportunity to talk to other authors and learn what they were doing and what was working for them and what wasn't working for them. Again, something I kind of knew. It's not like it means everybody's gonna go out and start a podcast, but you do learn from other authors if you're listening to them, if you listen to them on YouTube, or you read their articles online, or you listen to podcasts, which I listen to tons of podcasts. She wraps up that section with the warning to not let yourself get overwhelmed. We hear that a lot too here, at least here in the Authortube community. Marketing will come at you at every angle. A lot of us throw stuff at the wall, see if it sticks or not, but don't let yourself get overwhelmed. It's actually a question we used to ask on the Self-Publishing Tips and Tricks podcast was, how did you stop yourself from getting overwhelmed, or how did you manage that? She also reinforces the rule of 80-20, where 80% of your marketing efforts 80% of your results should come from 20% of your marketing efforts. Again, this is something I've heard. I've heard this multiple times, multiple podcasts, and quite a few articles I've read. So if you're anyone who is doing any type of research into being a self-publisher, an indie author, you're going to come across these ideas. And maybe this is why I just feel a bit jaded. You know, the book's going on, and I'm thinking, okay, yes, this is all stuff that I know. This is all stuff we should know. I'm looking for that spark of new information that I don't remember exactly what I heard on the podcast, but it was enough to make me feel excited to read this book and to learn more, and I have not got that. Everything she says is great, especially if you're a brand new person coming into marketing your book, but it's not enough. And so from here, let me go ahead and read the rest of what I wrote up so you can see why I felt like it was not good enough. At least not for me. So for me, none of this information was new. Not only that, I have to be honest, much of it was vague. For example, she says if your book's message is universal, then find a foreign rights agent or even reach out to foreign publishers to see whether they want your book in their language, yet there's no instructions on how to go about doing this. So yeah, so there you have, here's what you can do, but now if you want to know more about it, you have to go do research. Or she has a course, she has one-on-one coaching, she has a workbook. So this can lead a person to think, well, I want more information, let me buy more from her. Another example, it also seemed like a lot of her advice was, this is another example why I didn't get much from this book. It also seemed like a lot of her advice was better suited to nonfiction books versus fiction books. There was a lot of talk about how she created courses and workbooks and connected with past clients as she set up her marketing plan. In almost every instance, instead of saying readers, she says clients. The section I was most excited about was book marketing during launch days 1 through 30, and it was less than 2 pages long. She talks about the book marketing action plan, but never lays out what the plan is other than identifying that there are different sections and the idea of what those sections are meant for, but with no specific examples. Instead, she tacks on, if you want to see examples from the 15-page action plan, you have to buy her workbook. I'm not too happy that I would have to pay for 2 different books to get a full and comprehensive idea of what she's talking about. I would say that the majority of this book talks about the action plan. This is probably a good 75% of the book is the action plan. Yet you don't even know what it speaks to, but only in the vaguest ways. Lastly, it seems to me that every single thing she talks about as far as marketing can be found just by doing simple research and talking to other authors. This includes things like having a newsletter list, doing social media, connecting with other authors, going to conventions and conferences, creating other material to go with your book, like courses and workbooks, looking at the different platforms to sell your book on, like Amazon, Drafted Digital. Mind you, she says these are things to do, but there's no specifics. Creating different formats of your book, like ebook, paperback, and audiobooks, doing Amazon ads, doing newsletter swaps and group promotions. She does qualify that with using BookFunnel, getting a good editor and cover designer, being a podcast guest, and having an author website. All of these things I got a good grasp on before I even published my first book, just by watching YouTube videos. That was the majority of the content I consumed. Not everyone does YouTube videos, but from there I have found almost all the same information, like on David Gaughran's site, Derek Murphy's site. They all have blog posts. Joanna Penn has a site she writes blog posts up on, as well as does a podcast. There's lots of podcasts I listen to. All of this stuff has been covered in depth and in more detail than what is found here in the book. So maybe I did write this here to maybe say maybe I'm wrong in some way. Maybe I'm in a position where this seems redundant because I'm here on YouTube. And I still get to talk to many different authors, but even if I wasn't active as a content creator, I can still learn all of this information by watching YouTube videos and listening to podcasts. There isn't anything new I learned other than tactics I would never do, like giving away 100 paperbacks. For someone brand new to marketing their book, this could be a useful short guide on where to start, but you'll still need to do research to understand some of these concepts. I feel like this book alone falls somewhere between not being enough information for the beginner, but having nothing new to offer someone past the beginner stage. I was really disappointed as I had really high hopes for this book, but then maybe I would have liked it better if I bought the workbook too, which I don't feel that I should have to buy a workbook just to understand everything. So that's my thought there. I'm really sorry to the people I roped into reading this book with me because I really had high hopes that it was going to offer something new, something inspirational, or something, a different way of looking at things. And I didn't get any of that. And again, maybe I'm coming from the perspective of someone who already knows a lot of this stuff and sitting in an office reading this book with no air conditioning, with a heat wave going on. And so I'm hot and sweating and not in the best mood probably to be writing something like this. So I did finish off my script with a final thought from her book that I translated into my final thought, which is, she says it's important to know you need to predetermine how you will define if something is successful and unsuccessful. You're going to want to ask yourself this question before you buy into an opportunity. So if you don't know much about book marketing and you haven't consumed a lot of free material here on YouTube and other places, maybe this book is worth buying. However, if you've got some marketing experience, even if that only includes like using social media to sell your book, and you've already consumed a lot of information on this subject, then you might want to question yourself before you buy into the hype of this book. Thank you guys for hanging out with me today, and happy writing.